the greatest takeaway I had from my time at Nike, it applies to every single person and every single organization, is that winning is subjective. The big risk that we all face, every single person, every single organization, the risk is that we would get to the end of our lives and have won at things that weren't actually most important.
So you are a hardworking American man. You're climbing the corporate ladder, you're buying the stuff, you're accumulating wealth. Today we interview John Olinger about his book, Worthy Wins, where he discusses what really matters most. What is, in your opinion, the thing that matters most?
Well, the world would tell us that the things that matter most are what we accomplish on a variety of different fronts, right? That's what the world would say. My lived experience, plus the experiments and evidence that are out there, plus the Bible, say that actually what matters most is
Hey, I'm excited, guys. I have my new friend John Olinger on the podcast today, and you're going to enjoy today's episode. He's got stories that I think will really, really be epic. And so, John, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Honored to be here, my friend.
Yeah, fellow. Well, I get. What do we call you? You're not an expat, but you kind of left Oregon and went to Florida, so it's kind of like being an expat.
It is. It's. I still struggle to call myself a Floridian, so I still am an Oregonian at heart.
Tell us a little bit about your life and just what brought you here today.
Yeah, super glad to be here and share about my story. So, we were talking about Salem, so I'll start there. So I grew up in Salem, Oregon. I was the only child, had awesome parents, and my life took a big pivot when I was in fourth grade, and I was driving up I-5, Interstate 5 towards Portland for a track meet, and my dad told me that my mom had breast cancer. And he was like, did you notice? Had you heard us talking? And I was like, no. And so she was at the point in her journey where she had to start having chemo and whatnot. So if I'm fast forwarding there, my mom ended up passing away about 2 years later. Oh. And when she passed away, I was 11 when she passed away, and it was a rude awakening to the reality of real life. That's not what most kids go through that age, thankfully. And but God was doing this super cool thing at that time. He had orchestrated this space for me where Young Life was pretty big in Salem at the time. A guy named Eric Schofield was there, and Eric was holding high school Bible study. They call it campaigners at my best friend's house when I was in fourth grade. So right around the time my mom got diagnosed, and we were always hanging around as fourth graders. And so he invited us to be a part of that Bible study. So we were fourth graders hanging out with 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders.
Oh, wow.
And the he didn't even know it. Like if you were to ask him today, you wouldn't say like, oh, I did it for this reason. But that built this woven community for me that when my mom passed away 2 years later, I had these brothers around me to support me and catch me and help me process through that time, to cry tears. I just have vivid memories of sitting in my friend's living room with all these older guys around me crying, and them just being there for me. And so, the hard times of life, like I've had some great times, I've had some hard times, but that season was really tough and also really beautiful, where God showed up for me, and those guys showed up for me. And so I grew up, going to church with my parents, but then my mom died. I had a lot of questions like, why, God, how does this all happen? And just through that community, I really came to a place of like, hey, I understand I'm not alone, that God doesn't want this for me, and that he's with me in this. And so I ended up deciding, hey, I want to start following Jesus. That was like 7th grade, and the rest of my way, all the way until like I was literally 25, I was really just a good kid. Like the gravity of life made it be like, hey, I want to live well. Like, so I didn't all the obvious sins that were out there weren't really struggles for me, but the underneath ones all were. I struggled with all the things that guys struggle with. Mm-hmm. And just because I wasn't out partying and getting drunk didn't mean that I was living fully of the way that God wanted me to live. And so I ended up, basketball became my haven after my mom passed away. I started to see I couldn't just say that I was a Christian. Like Jesus was inviting me to go on a journey every
Mhm.
single day and choose to try to follow him.
That's really cool. That's well, you said something that really. First of all, let me say this. First of all, I'll say I love Young Life. So the guy that led me to the Lord in campus life got saved in Young Life.
Mm.
I am the committee chair. My wife and I are the committee chairs for our local Young Life.
Ah, I didn't
So
know that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Young Life basically discipled my youngest son when I left youth ministry and started this ministry. So big fans of Young Life, love what they're doing. So you've got a convergence of a couple things. You shared about your mother dying, but I know that your part of your story is your dad passes away. You're at Nike. You're representing Kobe. Can you kind of give a little 2-3 minute summation there before we jump into your book?
Yeah, I mean, it's all intertwined. That's the
I know.
good part. So I came back from playing hoops overseas, knocked on the door at Nike for a long time, like a lot of people do, and ended up, a long story short, choosing to take a job at the bottom of the totem pole at Nike, and because I wanted to give Nike a shot, because Nike had impacted me as a basketball player. What I longed for was to go into Nike and tell stories that could impact the next generation of athletes, to have belief that, like, you can't see me. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm built like a runner. I'm a basketball player trapped in a runner's body, and I believe that part of what helped me keep pushing and chasing basketball excellence was stories that I was inspired by about athletes, making me believe I could be as good as them. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to go in there and do that. And so I took a role at the very bottom of the totem pole. I was writing tweets for Nike basketball as my first job. I wrote 10,000 tweets for Nike basketball, and just started plugging away. And my second year at Nike, I still had that job, but I took a second job as a stretch that was not paid. So I did two jobs in my first 2 years, but I was only being paid for one. And that ultimately led into me getting a job in year three. The greatest takeaway I had from my time at Nike, that it applies to every single person and every single organization, is that winning is subjective.
Oh yeah.
And I would go and sit in these conference rooms with 20 people who were all really smart, who were all wanted great things, all wanted to do great work. But the reality was, what I would see time and time again is that the only way to truly succeed was to get extremely clear about what it meant to succeed. Because otherwise, everybody's definition of it was different, and we'd have competing priorities about what we were actually trying to get accomplished.
Hmm.
And so I walked away from my time at Nike feeling like, oh my gosh, that applies to every organization, but that applies to our lives. It goes back to what we were just talking about a moment ago, of like, have people gotten extremely clear in their life about what it means to succeed? And if you haven't, then here's the big risk. The big risk that we all face, every single person, every single organization, is that the risk is that we would get to the end of our lives and have won at things that weren't actually most important.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the title of your book, Worthy Wins, pointing your life towards what matters most. Colossians 3:23 is a great Bible verse on winning. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the men, as working for men, because the Lord's Christ you're serving. And so it's changing your perspective on success. So success in your book, Worthy Wins. How did your dad's passing? Your mom died when you were 11.
Mhm.
Now your dad is going to die here. It dies within this story. How does his passing really act as a turning point to bring you back to what matters most?
Without going into like the full story, basically, we started praying. We prayed for 40 days to about the possibility of moving east. Surprise, we moved east in the end. But in the midst of those 40 days, we were praying, and my wife had been like, "Hey, are you scared of leaving Nike?" Like, before we started praying, like, "Are you scared of leaving Nike?" I was like, "No, it's been an awesome run." And she's like, "Well, what are you scared of?" I said, "I'm
Mm,
scared of leaving my dad. Because if we left Oregon, I was his only child. And so we're praying, and 5 days into that 40 days of praying, my dad has a freak accident and ends up with a traumatic brain injury. So he
Oh,
slips in a grocery store parking lot like 7 in the morning, and hits his head and ends up in the ICU with a traumatic brain injury. And so we're like, wow, God, that's not really how we saw these 40 days going.
yeah.
But all right, we'll keep praying. And so we get to day 40. On day 40, Nike says, hey, you still have a job, but it's not the job I want, but it's a take it or leave it kind of
Hmm.
offer. Either you're unemployed, like not day 39 or not day 41, literally day 40 of these 40 days of praying. And it's a take it or leave it. Do you want the job or not? My wife was like, hey, what do you feel like God said in these 40 days? I said, I feel like God said, I trust you. You can choose.
Mm.
And so we said, okay, well, my dad's still in the hospital. We don't know what's going to happen. Let's like wait and see. And unfortunately, his body and his brain just couldn't get on the same page, man. And so he ended up passing away about 20 days later.
So sorry to hear that.
Yeah, appreciate that. And when the dust settled, and about a month later, I just told my wife, like, hey, I think we got to move to be closer to your family. We ultimately made the call to come to Florida. But the big takeaway that from my dad's passing that I want to share with people, and that I feel like I have a unique perspective that maybe most people in this stress bubble age don't have, is like most people aren't without both their parents.
Hmm.
Um, hopefully they're not, at least, because it's not awesome.
Mm.
But what my dad's death did for me was it reminded me of the things that I had learned when my mom passed away. It reminded me of, the fragility of our lives and not knowing how much time we have. And so I knew that. And like if you went back and talked to my high school friends, they would tell you like I was more serious than the rest of my friends. And that was because I knew life was serious. I knew there were parts of it that were serious. And,
Yeah.
but as you go along, you sort of get numb to that feeling. You get numb to that reminder. Life's going on. Everybody, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have a lot going on in your life, and you're just trying to do the best you can to put food on the table, care for your family, show up. And I'm right there with you, and was right there with you. And my dad's passing was this wake up call, because I was half his age. I was 37. He was 74. And it was like, oh man, I literally might be halfway done.
Hmm.
And if I'm halfway done, then I don't want to waste any of the time I have left. As you're going about life and you have all the things going on, how can you just like pause and take a pulse check and say, like, am I really winning in the places that matter most to me?
Hmm.
And if I'm
So,
not, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you got me here. I'm thinking about this. So, so in your book, let's start here. So what? Because we're about halfway through here. What matters most? Well, I mean, what's your takeaway? Nike, working at Nike, your mom passing, your dad passing. One of my things I tell young guys is life is more serious than you think. You learn that at 11, and then we're reinforced that at 37. What is, in your opinion, the thing that matters most?
Well, the world would tell us that the things that matter most are what we accomplish
Yeah.
on a variety of different fronts, right? That's what the world would say. But my lived experience, plus the experiments and evidence that are out there, plus the Bible, say that actually what matters most is not just what we accomplish, it's who. And so worthy wins that I'm writing about in my book are this combination of who plus what, their relationships and accomplishments. And the risk that we're running is that we would overinvest in our accomplishments and underinvest in the relationships that matter. And we would get to the end of our lives and say, oh man, I have all these accomplishments, I've done all these things, but I've underinvested in my relationships. And right, all the all the studies, all the things to say that the people that are the most fulfilled in their lives are the people with the best relationships.
Yeah, it's true wealth, right? What is, I
Yeah.
mean, you're using winning in your title, but it's also worthy. What it's worth, you have the word worth in there, worthy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what is true wealth, right? And we know from scripture that true wealth, we can't take our material wealth to heaven,
Amen.
but we
Yeah.
can take, and we do take, our relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, if you're going to invest in one, you know, you can have a lot of houses and a lot of stuff and never give a nickel to God's work. Well, that all goes away when you die, but what crosses over is what you did for his kingdom. And that, my friends, is surrounded around relationships. Maybe you gave a lot of money to a certain cause. That cause is around relationships. Or you gave money to a building campaign. That building campaign is about relationships. And so
Mm-hmm.
so where did you start? Where did you start to get your life back in order? What relationships did you start with?
That's the interesting part that probably sounds a little counterintuitive is that actually, when I think about the relationship that matters most, I'd say myself, but within that, what I mean very clearly is my relationship with God as the starting point, but then also my physical health and my mental health. Those three. So like when I'm trying to simplify it and be clear, if I'm sharing, like that's the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
If that relationship with God and the relationship to myself within my physical health are not taken care of, it makes it really difficult to have solid investments in the other relationships. And so starting there, like that's the foundational one for me. But then, if you're married, for me, I'm married. So the next most important relationship is that with my wife. And then the next one is my three boys. And then working our way out into other family and friends that are really important there. And then work is in there, but it's fifth on my list in terms of things that I'm saying are really important. And so once you've declared that those things are true, then it's all about saying, well, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I think when I look around in our world, people are like again, I'm included in this, but I look at people and I say, man, everybody is trying so hard to do well at their
Hmm.
life. They're trying, and there's so much going on and all the things. So I'm very clear, like I don't want to push people for some complicated thing. I don't
Hmm.
want them to try. I'm all about how can we take small, simple steps that lead to big outcomes. And so, what I've seen in my journey is that, you know, intentions don't really matter because we go back to the guys at the side of the Sea of Galilee saying, Jesus, I want to follow you, but I'm still here at the lake. No, we got to have action, but it doesn't have to be monumental. So if you're saying, hey, I really want to like have a great relationship with God, well, the only way for that to happen is for there to be mutual action, not because God needs it from us,
Hmm. Hmm.
but because we need Him. And when we draw close to Him, right? Scripture says, draw near to me, and I'll be near to you. Like that is on us. And so, if I want to have a great relationship with God, then I have to take steps. And we're in a world where so many things are competing for our time, energy, and attention.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because my wife's a flight attendant, and so what they teach people during the safety discussion is, or demonstration, is to put on your mask before you put on the children's mask. So
Mm,
I think as a man, it's more than just you and your wife. What you do sets the course for your family and generations. So if you're not healthy, nothing around you is healthy.
yeah,
So you need to be healthy. You know, Jesus, it said in Luke 2:52, the last phrase, the last verse before it shows Jesus as an adult, Jesus as a child, it says, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor in God and man. So he grew mentally, he grew physically, he grew spiritually, he grew socially. And so, you know, to grow with this, we have to do that. If we have an overbalance, too much physical, not mental or spiritual or social, we're unhealthy. If we are out of balance in any area, so we have to do that, and that helps us in that relationship with God,
yeah.
and that's where it starts. 100%. I really appreciated we raised three boys too, so
Love
our
it, man.
boys are in their late 20s and 30s, and you know, if you were to ask me how would you define success, what's your greatest victory? and we've got a lot of victories. We've got a lot of things we've done really well and a lot of things to be proud of. But I would say I have a wife who still wants me. She doesn't need me. She's pretty darn strong. I have a wife who still wants me, and I have three
Mhm.
sons that want to hang out with me.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Mm.
what better accomplishment is that?
Yeah, man.
You know,
It's
I mean,
beautiful.
there's a pride that, but that stuff doesn't happen. You don't wake up one day and that happens, right?
Yeah, you don't. And you know, the alternative side of it is that nobody gets married, nobody has kids and says, "Hey, I wanna get divorced or I wanna have a terrible relationship with my kids." Nobody says that,
Yeah,
right? Nobody wants that. Nobody sets off on those things, so the outcome is bad. The reality is we're under attack, and so when I start talking about simple things, whether it's the simple ways to connect with God or, you know, one change my wife and I made in our relationship was like we moved to Florida and, you know, got out of Oregon where we had been basically inside with our young boys 24/7. Moved to Florida, they didn't even know what COVID was, so, you know, it's wide open, and we have a little bit of help, so we start going on a date night, right? Everybody talks about it, go on your date night. Um, Maybe like 3 or 4 months into that, of every Friday going on a date night, my wife's like, "Hey, I'm not actually enjoying this."
oh,
And the reason why was because our dates had turned into dumps.
oh,
All the kid stuff, all the logistics, all the things that needed to be talked about that we weren't, again, our kids were still young and still at home mostly. Like our oldest one was in school, but the other two were at home. And so like again, we're just in the survival mode, right?
yeah.
And and so we're like, okay, we got to make a change. Like this, like if we're gonna go on dates, these should be enjoyable. They cost money, they take, you know, they time, like, and so we made a change and we implemented, we went from having the one touch point of a date night and we added three. So we went from one to three. And so we went from a date night,
Wow.
we added something we call Wine Wednesdays. And the reality is it's just a rhyming word that shows up on the calendar. Sometimes we have wine, if we're honest, but not, it's not indicative like, hey, we have to open wine. It's
Yeah.
literally just saying on our calendar on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, it says Wine Wednesday. And the reason why we put it on there was so that we would schedule nothing else. And we knew that that time is blocked off for us to be connected. And sometimes we watch a show, sometimes we talk deeply, sometimes we just sit in silence because we're tired, you know, like it's, but it's space for us to intentionally connect. If
So
we're
it's
saying we want to be connected at the end.
so you're doing three things. So I don't want to overwhelm some of these guys that are rookies at this.
Yes.
So would it be another fair assumption to say on the one date night? Because a lot of these guys, I had a guy tell me, I'm going to shoot for one date night a month. I go, that is a horrible idea. She needs at least one night a week, especially if you got kids in the stress bubble. So
Yep.
would it be a solution instead of, I mean, I like your three, but some of these guys might be overwhelmed with that.
Mhm.
Would another option be to say, we're going to do our weekly date night and we're not talking about the kids. We're
Yes.
just going to focus on the relationship.
Yes.
But I mean,
Yeah.
you're saying something that's really important here. You're saying we did one thing and you said date night. I mean, I think honestly that could be the thing with your marriage.
Yeah.
So what's you have wine Wednesdays, you have date night, generic date night. What's the third one?
The third one's a weekly business meeting.
So that's where you talk about the family and the business, the
Yeah.
kids in the house.
Yeah, and honestly, like that's an evolving process. Like for a while, when we first started doing it, you know, we had some like good connection time at the beginning of it, like asking a couple questions, like how are you doing? How how could I love you better? We were doing that in that space.
Yeah.
As our kids have gotten older, as our work things have picked up, and we were doing that during the week in a morning, like a morning coffee timeline. It just we realized like that window kept getting crunched and we said, hey, we're going to save some of those connecting questions for either the Wine Wednesdays or the date night. But right now that weekly business meeting can just be like 15 minutes of us looking at the calendar for the next 2 weeks. Hey, what's coming up? What are we doing? Where do we need to pivot? Are we like just getting the logistics down? Because I know how I feel when we don't do that and we end up in a, hey, are you getting the kids? Are you like, what happened? Like, I thought you were getting them, or I thought you were going to be at the bus stop, or this or that. I have an appointment. And so it's just meant to keep, as you said, if you're going to go on a date night, make it a date.
Well, and you said so, and the date night doesn't have to be fancy. It can be
No,
go
no.
watch. I mean, if you live in Florida, go sit and watch the sun. Well, you
Yes.
probably can't see the sunset very well, but sunrise, or we had the sunset on the West Coast.
Mhm.
It could be very go to my wife and I when we were raising the boys. Burger King had a dollar special on Whoppers. We had so many dollar Whopper nights you can't believe it. Anyway, but it can be very simple. But one of the things you brought up that I thought was really clear, and you alluded to it. It's this: you're in the stress bubble.
Yep.
Like, you're a lot of this time in the stress bubble of treading water. And so what you'll find as a guy who's been in the stress bubble, you'll find that the 3 date nights will turn into one. Well, then it'll go to two. Well, then the wine Wednesday's looking good, but this one didn't work. And so there's a lot of adjustments,
Mhm.
because what happens is then your kids, you're an athlete, your wife, I'm sure your kids will grow up in sports, or your kids grow up in band, or your
Yeah.
kids grow up in Bible quizzing. I don't know what it is. Things change as their schedule changes,
Yeah.
but that sacred cow must remain. We're
Yes.
going to do something together to build our marriage weekly.
Yeah. So one of the things we've changed, because just literally in the last like 2 weeks was like, hey, we're gonna go for a walk after we work out on Mondays and Wednesdays. Because part of it was sometimes on Wednesday nights, we have the time blocked off, but sometimes we're just tired.
Yeah,
And
100%. That's why I
and
said
it's yeah. And so it's like, you know, my wife is saying like, hey, I'm just sometimes really tired and I don't necessarily want to talk at that point in the night. And so it's like, okay, well, let's go work out in the morning right after the kids go to the bus stop. And then we're just going to do like a 20 to 30-minute walk. And that doesn't mean it's always deep conversation. It just means, again, we're committing to be connected. Right. So,
Well, you said something else. Okay, so I'm unpacking your normal lifestyle here. So another idea you threw out there, I hope these guys are catching this, is that you build your marriage by finding something that you guys have a value together with. And for you, my wife and I, same thing, working out. Go work out together. I mean, that's
yeah.
not a date, but you're doing something together,
Yep.
and you're doing, and that's a hobby that you've established together. So these are things that are important in the stress bubble when you're trying to build a marriage. So I want to focus. So we've nailed out, hey, your relationship with God and your health is really important, so that you can invest in the second most important relationship in your life, in the universe. The first one's Jesus. I always say Jesus is the most important relationship in the universe. Your
Hmm.
wife is the most important relationship on earth. Your
Yep.
children are the most important relationship in your lineage. So
Mm,
let's focus on the kids.
yeah.
What matters most when building worth and value and becoming wealthy with your children?
I think you would probably acknowledge this because, you've kids have gone through the ages. Like it's going to depend on how old your kids are for
100%.
for and their styles and maybe their genders and all those things may have a factor in what it looks like to create connection and pouring into them. But for me in the age of my kids, we're not quite aged out of it. It really is finding moments and windows of deep presence. Like yes, it can be like always on, but like one of the things I learned through my dad's passing is sometimes if we measure the quality of our relationships based upon how much time we spend with people purely, it's insatiable. It doesn't mean that time doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
just means if your metric is, well, I need to spend, every waking moment after school from when my kids get home or when they're done with whatever until they go to bed, it's a little bit of an unrealistic expectation, and it does you can be with them and not be with them, right?
100%. Netflix,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Here's what my son was talking to me just the other day. Dad, tell me about, like, what'd you do good as a dad? And my kids are going to come on my podcast. And full disclosure to the world,
Love it.
I got into like hiking and backpack hunting, and so I had a pack frame that was an external frame, and
Mhm.
it had a meat shelf on it. My kids would just stand on it, hike them.
Mm.
I would go to school once a week when the kids were like in elementary school and play football after school with their friends.
Right.
One of my boys, my oldest boy, I'd ride him to school, 2 miles of school I think it
Mm.
was I think it was Monday, because we go get donuts and then ride to school. And
Yeah.
so these little things that you build a deep connection,
Yeah.
because that key thing is that you This is what I'm hearing you say, John, that you are fully present in the moment.
Yes. Am I perfect? No. But am I trying to create those moments where they know that I'm fully with them? Yeah. And so two things that stand out that one that well they anybody could adopt either of these. One, so especially when you start to add multiple kids into the mix, you're trying to figure out how do we create one-on-one time, right?
Yes.
What does that look like? And so for us, we started implementing a monthly date um, on the day of the month that they were born. So if they're born on the 20th, every 20th of the month, they get to go on a date with mom or dad. And it's not fancy. It's not going for steak. It might just be going to the grocery store and getting a cookie from the bakery there. Um, but it's a commitment to create those moments of presence. And
Well, and I'm saying the genius of that idea. I've not heard of this idea before. The genius of that idea is my birthday's on the 14th. Even though you forget my birthday date, I'm not going to forget my birthday date.
yeah,
Does that make sense? So
yeah,
the
of
genius
course,
is you create something that they're going to remind you of.
100%.
I love that idea.
Yeah, and so
And
it's
that's
on the
not,
calendar
it's
then.
not going to kill you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just a connection point. So there's that one that again anybody could apply regardless how many kids you got. Like again, it doesn't have to be expensive. It might just be go for a walk in the neighborhood, whatever you can do to say, hey, this is a reminder on that day. And my wife and I just alternate months, you know, hey, on that day, you're going to get one-on-one time with mom or dad.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so then the second one is right now, again, age of my kids is important.
Yeah.
But about a year ago, we were struggling to get our kids upstairs at bedtime. So it'd be like the clock had hit 7:30 or whatever, and be like, all right, hey, come on, guys, time to go upstairs. And they're just dragging, doing what boys do, messing around, whatever. And so I said, hey, who wants a camel ride? And so I go over to the stairs, and first one over there jumps on, gets camel ride upstairs. The other two are waiting at the bottom. And so I give them camel rides. And so that was the starting point of like, all right, every night when we'd say, hey, it's bedtime, they'd say, all right, it's who are we doing camel rides? And I went first last time, or I went last time. How did I get a turn? So we do that. And then that sort of evolved into I don't know where I saw it. Maybe you've seen the stat. Like it used to be like, okay, we're going upstairs and we're gonna like calm them down. Somewhere at some point I saw, hey, it's actually good to roughhouse before bed. And so now we do 10 minutes of wrestling. And we set the timer, and it's really me trying to keep from getting hurt by them as they get older and bigger and come flying at me from weird angles. But so when I say it's bedtime, they don't even care about the camel rides anymore. All they care about is, are we doing 10 minutes of wrestling? That's the question every night. And that's present time. My phone is not going up there. None of this. Like it's just they know that they're getting that time with me. And I have no doubt that they're going to remember these moments where we had 10 minutes of wrestling.
Oh man, that's so good. Yeah, when you do that with your 30 and 28-year-old, that doesn't work out so well. But I love what you're doing. I used to throw my kids in the air, throw them, throw them,
Mm-hmm.
throw them. Then it was wrestling. Then we'd go on the trampoline for hours on the trampoline.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that you're bringing home here is what matters most with your kids, depending on their ages. And you're raising boys, so girls, it's different.
Yeah,
It's tea
totally.
parties, it's dollhouse, it's playing doctor, it's going to. I mean, it's girl thing. You're doing different things with the girls, but regardless, it's age appropriate with your kids. It's consistently valuing them. But and I want to go back and reiterate this because we live in a weird generation where good parents make a horrible mistake. It's reiterating the fact that your kids are not the center of that family unit. It is Jesus and then your wife.
Yep.
That relationship is the most important, and that relationship flows down to your kids. And that's what I hear you saying. And I think,
Yeah.
and I think the consistent, creative engagement with the dad being present will change their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely,
good,
man.
man.
And what
Yeah, go
are we
ahead.
out of time? I was just gonna say, I'll say it really quick. So one of the cool things you're saying that when Jesus is at the center, so my kids didn't know that I'd written a book. And so the box shows up with the books, and my wife has this idea. She's like, "Hey, let's film them, each of them coming out here, handing them the book and asking them to tell us what the book's about." They know nothing about the book. And it was really, really humbling, but it's really important because of what you just said. All three of them, even my little guy who's 5, they all assumed the book was about Jesus.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And those videos we just like did privately to friends or whatever, but like we'll have this memory, and I was blown away and humbled and honored all at the same time of like, when you make that commitment to make Jesus central to your life, that does have reverberations out in your kids, even if they don't, again, they had no idea what it was about, but they knew it was about Jesus.
Well, you know what, John? We're doing full circle here. We're talking about you learning in Israel to follow Jesus, and now your kids are learning to follow Jesus because dad follows Jesus. So, hey, I have one last question for you. It's real serious, so I hope you got your seatbelt on. Tell me about your relationship with Kobe Bryant, and give me a Kobe story, your best Kobe story.
Oh man, I have never told this story on a podcast. That when you ask me like that of my best story, okay, I'll share it. So, first of all, right?
I'm a Lakers fan, so I'm just letting you know.
So first of all, we established here, right? I'm an Oregon native. That means I'm a Trailblazers fan.
Yeah.
So, when I ended up in the job working with Kobe, it wasn't like I said, "Oh my gosh, I love Kobe."
Oh no, you're like, I hate this guy.
Kobe, the Blazers were going to win. They were going to go to the NBA Finals. They were going to win the NBA Finals if that comeback hadn't happened in the fourth quarter with Shaq and Kobe. So so I started working with Kobe, and he won me over pretty good, man. And I just ended up really respecting his commitment to his family and the ways that he approached that. And we would go meet with him in California, and we'd fly down, and it would be like, "Hey, at 2:00, Kobe's leaving," because he was going to the carpool line.
The carpool line.
Yeah, he was going to go pick up his girls from school.
Wow.
And so that was really remarkable. The reality was what I witnessed and experienced from Kobe was a guy who was pouring his life into the next generation of athletes. And his choice to go to the carpool line, his choice to invest in Gen Z girls, really was that he was choosing what he wanted to be his worthy win. For him, he could have done anything he wanted afterwards. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I won't go.
I'll give you a pass. I could tell you're like, I could get in trouble for this, so I'm going to give you a pass on the other one. But honestly, that's an outstanding story that honors a man who did some really, really wonderful things. So, hey, John, how do these guys follow you, get a hold of your materials? How do they get a hold of you? How do they get involved?
Yeah, appreciate it. You can find my book on Amazon, Worthy Wins. You can find me on my website, John-Olinger.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram at John Olinger.
All right, brother. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. Had a great time, and God bless you, man.
Blessings to you
Stay
too,
out of
man.
that heat. Stay out of that heat. Hey, guys, if you like this episode, text the link to one of your buddies who might like it as well. Thanks a lot for following Men in the Arena. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. Find out what matters most. And be a man.